All right, everyone, welcome back to this new episode in this series of Ancient History of Bharat. All right, so yeah, things are now starting to get interesting, starting to make sense, starting to at least maintain a consistent narrative. All right, so far we have seen how Bimbisara was betrayed by his own son Ajat okay, and Ajat captures his own father. There were multiple attempts made by him. Two are the ones that we know of because we have some written evidence of it. But it's a very well known psychological fact that if you catch somebody doing something, they have almost probably or almost certainly done it previously. Okay, so yes, Ajat succeeds his father Bimbisara. Ajatshatru keeps his father in jail, and that is where he commits suicide. Okay. Now Bimbisara had a matrimonial alliance with the kingdom of Kosala. Okay. Now kingdom of Kosala they had a matrimonial alliance with Bimbisara. There was one of the princes from the Bimbisara, and when he committed suicide, okay, when Bimbisara committed suicide in prison, the wife or the princess from Kosala, okay, through which Bimbisara was bound by a matrimonial alliance with the kingdom of Kosala, she also died out of grief. Okay, now this is something that enraged King, who was the Prasenjit. Yes, King Prasenjit was the king of Kosala during that time, and since now that princess who had been married to Bimbisara, now she was dead. Okay, and it was in dowry of that princess that Kosala or Prasenjit had given the town of Kashi to Bimbisara as a dowry. But now that since she was dead, Prasenjit, recanted the dowry. I don't think if that is, can I use the word recanted for dowry? Okay. Yeah, you can comment it below. But yes, now that since the princess was dead, Prasenjit decided there is no need of dowry anymore, and he took back Kasi. So this again enraged Ajatshatru, who had succeeded Bimbisara. Ajatshatru waged wars. Okay, waged wars against Prasenjit, but I would say Ajatshatru was entrapped in an ambush and had to surrender with his whole army to Prasenjit. So Ajatshatru, he declared a war to gain back Kashi, and he was defeated. But in the end, there was a peace treaty that was signed between the two, and I would say Ajatshatru might have some exceptional negotiation skills, because even though after getting defeated in that war, he was able to negotiate the return of Kasi as well as a matrimonial alliance. Okay, one of the daughters of Prasenjit was married to Ajatshatru. So I guess he had either had very good negotiators or he himself was a very good negotiator. Okay. Next was the Lichavis. Lichavis were a republic that existed in the eastern part of Bharat. Okay. So Ajatshotru's conquest of its most powerful member, the Lichavi Republic. The cause of the conflict between the two is differently stated in different texts. Okay. Like I said, so there are different reasons why, because like I said, there are two sources of information for this particular period of history in our country. Okay, that is the Buddhist texts and the Jain texts. Okay, now both these spiritual systems, I would go as far as saying, not to be blasphemous or disrespectful, but I would say that Buddhism and Jainism, they were rather spiritual startups. Okay, but yes, that is again my opinion. I'm not saying they were, just because I say that they were spiritual startups does not mean that I am questioning their veracity as belief systems. Okay, there are a lot of people out there who believe in it, and yeah, I'm not questioning it. I'm not taking anything away from their glory. Okay. So yeah, Ajatshotru also conquered the Lichavis. In fact, he had to, plan a lot to conquer Lichavis. It would thus appear that Ajatshotru was opposed by a powerful combination of hostile rulers of the east, including his old rivals of the chiefs of Kasi and Kosala. Okay, now that he was there, okay, it is this is something that usually happens with a lot of people, and almost all of us have, went through this. not getting a better word, but I would use the word phase. Okay, there will be a phase in your life when you will suddenly get a lot of things that you were praying for earlier. Okay, but now that since you have those things, you will have consequent problems or consequent troubles or stress that emanates from having a lot of things that you asked for in prayers. Okay, so now that Ajatshotru was on the throne of Magad, okay, he realized that he had made a lot of enemies. In fact, the rulers of Kashi and Koshala, okay, although Prasenjit might have concluded a peace treaty with him, but all the further rulers might not be as amenable as Prasenjit himself. Okay, so yes, I would say Ajatshotru, he had realized that there had to be some problem. There were problems, and he had to become creative to solve these problems. Okay. On the eve of this great conflict, which created a first-class political sensation in the country, even the Buddha, detached in his religious eminence from all worldly affairs, felt it his duty to take part in this take his proper part in the larger politics of the country. As a born Democrat and a champion of Republican interests, he assured Lichavis, who formed the leading democratic state in the country, that it could not be defeated even by the mighty king like Ajatshotru. Okay, Buddha, he was, I would say, giving them confidence that no, Ajatshotru will not attack the Lichavis. But there was one thing that Ajatshotru had realized, that the Lichavis were, exceptionally united. Since they were a republican state, okay, since their system of governance was not monarchical, okay, they were autonomous clans or rather oligarchs, we don't know exactly, but they had some or the other version of democracy as we see in the world today. Okay, so he realized that they were the Lichavis, they were largely united. Okay, and what do you do when somebody is united? So Ajatshotru realized that the only way by which he could conquer the Lichavis was by destroying their inner unity. For this purpose, he deputed his minister Vasakara on the nefarious mission of sowing seeds of disunion among the Lichavis at Vaisali. Okay, so this idea that was sold to us in 47, that it was the British, and it was the British who used this tactic of divide and conquer. Okay, the tactic of divide and conquer is as old as time itself. Okay, there was nothing new that the British invented. The divide and rule policy has always been there. There are multiple imperial powers in Europe itself. They have used this tactic of divide and rule. So this, I would say, this delusion that we have that, it was the British who divided us and ruled us, and that is why our society is divided on communal lines, is only because of British. That's not right. Okay, we have examples of Ajatshotru 2500 years ago who employed this tactic of divide and conquer. Why? Because he wanted to conquer the Lichavis, because they were a republican state and he had those ambitions of establishing the greatest monarchy that this land has ever seen, that is Magad. Okay, so he employed this rule, he employed spies, he employed people that he wanted to instigate disunion, okay, between the republican member states of the Lichavis. Infected by jealousy between different classes, between the rich and the poor and the strong and the weak, the Lichavis became a changed people, lacking their old social cohesion. Okay. Thus, the stage was set for Ajatshotru's operations like the Lichavis. Now, this is what he did. Okay, he fractured the society based on economic lines, meaning dividing people based on who were rich and who were poor. Okay, he also divided the people among the lines of social power. People with a lot of resources, people who were resourceful, and others who were considered, who had literally had zero influence over political matters or social matters. So this is how Ajatshotru divided people. Do you see any parallels? Okay, the Aryan society. Okay, what did he do? What did he do to the Aryan society of the Lichavis? He divided them based on economic lines and based on social lines, and hence the ground was set for him to take over that state. Okay. Side by side, I want you guys to keep in the contemporary picture of Bharat. Okay, do we still see these fault lines? Okay, it's very specifically written over here. The people changed. Okay, the Lichavis became a changed people lacking their old social cohesion. Okay, the reason, the core idea, the core principle that held the state of Lichavis as a republican state that existed amongst, amidst all the other monarchies of that time. Lichavis, I'm not saying they were the only ones, but they are the only ones that have documented evidence that they existed as autonomous clans. Okay, so if you had to conquer them, what you had to do was you had to break their social cohesion. And how did Ajatashatru manage to break that social cohesion? By widening. Okay, it's very easy to instigate people. Okay, it's very easy to play at the minds of people who are not very economically well off, because they will think that certainly the rich are doing something that is wrong. Okay, that is what he might have done. And after dividing them, the stage was set for him to take over the Lichavis. Okay, but he had to plan his military preparations for the conquest on a large scale. The Lichavi Republic was on the other side of Ganga, while his capital Rajgriha was too far inland and remote to serve as an efficient base of operations. He had to construct a new base, a fort at a convenient site on the river, and thus was laid the foundation of the new capital, Patliputra. Okay, this is something that we see. We read in our history textbook that the capital of Magad was changed from Rajgriha to Patliputra during the later stages. Okay, now there is one very good explanation given in this book for such capital change. Okay, and that reason was Ajatashatru wanted to defeat the Lichavis. Okay, but the capital of Lichavis was on the other far side of Ganga, and the capital of Ajatashatru or his state was very much inland, so he needed a base that was closer to the river. Okay, and hence to get rid of this shortcoming in his military strategy, what did he do? He set up another fort at Patliputra that we currently know as Patna. Okay, why? For the simple reason of making it easier for him to take over the Lichavis. This should form a mental picture inside your head. Why would a king go as far as constructing another fort just for a base? Lichavis might have been very important to the polity of Bharat or polity of Aryan Bharat at that time. Okay, because they were like I said, I don't know if there were other non-monarchical clans who existed or who functioned based on the idea of, a republic. But so far we only have one example, that is the Lichavis. Okay, so to conquer them, this king went as far as constructing a new fort. Okay, so this should give you an idea how important were the Lichavis, or how patient Ajatashatru might have been, how cunning he might have been, what sort of planning he might have done to overtake this state. Now this is something that is very interesting. Okay, I when I read it was also something that I found interesting, and I'll share it with you. When the construction was completed of the new fort in Patliputra, when the construction was completed, the two ministers invited Buddha to dinner at their house and named the gate through which Buddha went out of the city as the Gautama Gate, and the ghat from which he was ferried across Ganga was commemorated as the Gautama Ferry. It was on this unique occasion that Buddha is said to have made his pregnant prophecy that Patliputra would one day grow to be the chief city of, wait for it, Aryan Bharat, and the center of trade, business and economic prosperity. Okay, so it was Mahatma Buddha himself who prophesied or prophesied, I don't know which one of them is correct, whichever, it was Mahatma Buddha who prophesied or prophesied that Patliputra would go on to become the future capital of the Aryan state of Bharat. Okay, so it's Mahatma Buddha himself who came up with this prophecy. Okay, so this also should give you insight into the importance of Mahatma Buddha, or the relevance that he commanded during the times that he lived. I mean, if the king is constructing a new fort and inviting him to come over there, it might be important. Okay, Okay, there is also some talk about Jain texts over here. Military operations of the Magadhan forces. Ajatashatru for the first time made use of two secret weapons of war. Okay, the Jain texts, okay, they were written in Prakrit, although largely the history of Ajatashatru is based on the Buddhist texts. Okay, but there are some military details in the Jain texts as well. Okay, now, not to be very offensive, but I will ask this question. Don't the Jains believe in the principles of non-violence? And they do. Okay, I'm not questioning that whether they don't or whether, I'm not questioning their tenet of ahimsa and non-violence and lifelong renunciation of non-violence. That's not what I'm questioning. If the core philosophy of a certain belief system is non-violence, why do your texts mention about military tactics? Okay, something that you might wonder about. Okay, if the core idea of a belief system is ahimsa, that is non-violence, and you give up non-violence for your entire living life, why do your scriptures mention military tactics? This is something that you must think. Okay, the Jain texts give interesting details of the military operations of the Magadhan forces. Ajatashatru for the first time made use of two secret weapons in this war. Number one was the Mahasila Kantaka, meaning some of a catapult, like the stones, largest stones that were thrown using such mechanism. Okay, so that's mentioned in Jain texts. Okay, the other was the Rath Musala, a chariot which created havoc by wheeling about and hurling destruction to it by its attached rods. So there was some sort of a chariot with modifications of attached rods to it, and apparently it created havoc. Okay, so this is written in Jain texts. That is something that should be interesting. These elaborate preparations show that the war between Magad and the Lichavi Republic was a protracted one. The aggressor had first to undertake the costly construction of a new fort on the Ganga, which must have taken some time, at least 2 years. Okay, like I said, the war must have been very important. The secret work done by the Magadhan spies quartered on the Lichavis at Vaisali to sow the seeds of dissension among them and undermine their national solidarity. Thirdly, Magad had to fight not a mere isolated individual republic but a large and powerful confederation of 36 republics under its chief Chetaka of great political influence, strengthened by matrimonial alliances with several kings. Okay, so I would say, in a way, this war that Ajatashatru had waged with the Lichavis, I would say it was rather overambitious of him, because it was not just one state. Lichavis was an umbrella term for all the republics who existed as non-monarchical confederacies. Okay, so in a sense there were 36 kingdoms within the Lichavis. So whom was Ajatashatru fighting? Ajatashatru was fighting 36 kingdoms, and on top of that, allies of those 36 kingdoms that had matrimonial relations with these people. Okay, so I would say yes. The Jain texts indicate a period of more than 16 years for this war. So this war lasted almost for 16 years according to Jain texts. We are told that Gosala, the great religious leader and his rival of Mahavira, who died in 484 BC, saw this war in progress. The war, which must therefore have lasted for at least 484 to 468 BC, ended in a complete victory for Ajatashatru. He fought for 16 years and he emerged victorious. And he destroyed the freedom of the city-state of Vaishali, which had given birth to his mother. Okay, now that he had conquered, okay, he was, I guess, free to do whatever he pleased. Okay. Ajatashatru was establishing his suzerainty in the eastern Bharat, roused the hostility of his equally ambitious rival of central India. Now that he had conquered the Lichavis, okay, now he had to focus on the central Bharat. Okay, and there was another king, King Chand Pradyota of Avanti. Okay. While he humbled Kosala and other eastern powers and absorbed Vaisali and the whole or part of Kasi, the king of Avanti could do nothing against him. He thus extended the boundaries of his kingdom and laid the foundation of Magad Empire on a solid basis. So he even conquered the parts of central Bharat as well, including Avanti. Okay, so Ajatashatru was now on the rise. He had conquered the Lichavi republics. He had also conquered the kingdoms of central Bharat. Ajatashatru is represented as in Jain texts as Jain and in Buddhist texts as Buddhists. Okay, this is again I've also spoken about this in one of my previous videos as well. And not even in those times, even currently. Okay, using the word religion. Okay, it's like I said, it's a very inadequate word to describe what the kind of the way of life or the rita or the cosmic order that we like to call as dharma. Okay, so religion is a very inadequate word to describe that, but since we do not have any other word, we'll use that word. But when I say religion, I mean dharma. Okay, not the narrow definition that the West uses when they use the word religion. Okay, so this is when it matters what is the religion of the king. Okay, what kind of belief system or what kind of faith does he subscribe to? Okay, because the Jain texts describe Ajatashatru as a Jain, Buddhist texts describe Ajatashatru as Buddhist as well. Okay, we'll discover in the few further chapters who exactly was Ajatashatru or what kind of worship did he do. But all, like, I can say with almost certainty that he was an Aryan. He practiced the Aryan way of life, as in the way of sacrifices, the way of worshipping. He had not so far crossed over into Buddhism or Jainism. Not that Buddhism and Jainism were any way different from the Aryan faith. Okay, they are offshoots, to say the least, of the Aryan faith. They have borrowed heavily from the Aryan faith and then the Aryan scriptures. Okay, so in the Upapatika Sutra, he openly declares before Mahavira and his disciples his faith in him as the true teacher who has made clear the true path of religion based on renunciation and non-violence. So there is one book that goes by the name of Upapatika Sutra. It's a Jain text. Okay, in that text, Ajatashatru is openly declaring Mahavira as his teacher, as in the 24th Tirthankar, that is Mahavira. At the same time, like I said, Ajatashatru in the Buddhist texts is also claimed as a Buddhist. So that is why it is important to know the religion of the leader of the state, because it is he who stands up as a role model to the subjects. Okay. There is also one of the sculpture. Where is that sculpture found? Let me. Yes, in the sculptures of Barhut, the second century BC sculptures that were discovered in Barhut, where it says that Ajatashatru was a Buddhist. Okay. What is very interesting is there were multiple teachers that Ajatashatru had. There is one very interesting incident that this book mentions about Ajatashatru. Next, we see him on hearing of the Buddha's death, hurry to Kusinara. There is Ajatashatru, after hearing that Buddha had died, he rushed to Kusinara as an ardent Buddhist to claim a share of the relics of his sacred body, sending in advance a messenger to say on his behalf, "The Lord was a Kshatriya, I too am a Kshatriya, I am worthy of a share of the relics of the God. I will erect a stupa over the relics of the Lord and make a feast." Okay. So yes, when Mahatma Buddha, when he died, okay, and when Ajatashatru was made aware of this information, he sent one of his men over there to take into the custody the relics of Buddha and promised that he would erect a stupa over there. According to Mahavamsa, Ajatashatru built Dhatu Chaityas all round the capital. He further showed his devotion to Buddhism by repairing at Rajgriha 18 Mahaviharas which were deserted by the Buddhists after Buddha's death. Okay, so he equally contributed to both these philosophies, but we have no unequivocal and explicit evidence about what exactly was the dharma what exactly was the religion of Ajatashatru. And he was more likely an Aryan. He was practicing the Aryan way of life, the Aryan faith, as we will discover in the further parts of this chapter. Okay, because everything that relates to the Aryan thought has come from Rig Veda, Upanishads, and all the other subsequent Samhitas and the Brahmanas and the literature. Okay, so we have no other reason to assume that he might have practiced some other secular faith. Okay, let's talk about the successors of Ajatashatru. Who exactly did succeed Ajatashatru? The Buddhist traditions represents all the 4 kings following Ajatashatru as parricides, meaning each one killing their successive, each one killing their fathers to succeed to the throne. After their rule of 56 years, the people awoke to the fact that they were living under a dynasty of murderers, and they had once supplanted it by electing the minister Sisunaga as a king. Okay, this is mentioned in the Buddhist text of Mahavamsa in chapter number 7. Okay, that after Ajatashatru, there were 4 kings. Okay, each one of them murdered their fathers to usurp the throne. Okay, and this went on for 56 years. So after a span of 56 years, people realized that we were living under the rule of murderers. We don't need to live under their rule. So there has to have been some sort of a movement or a revolution. You cannot supplant a dynasty by merely requesting them to step down. That's not how it works. So it's really anyone's guess how exactly was there was a transition in power. After it's written over that Sisunaga was a king that was supplanted by electing the minister. He was a minister apparently. Sisunaga was a minister in the court of the successors of Ajatashatru. Okay. So there are multiple alright. So then again it goes into a lot of stories about Sisunaga finally destroyed the power of the Pradyotas of Avanti and added it to the growing kingdom of Magad. Probably both the kingdom of Vatsa and Kosala were also annexed, and thus Magad absorbed all the important states in North Bharat that flourished in the time of Gautam Buddha. Okay, Sisunaga, although there is no much information about him, he was simply a minister in the court of Ajatashatru, and after people appointed him as the king, he conquered both the kingdoms of Vatsa and Kosala and united everything. Okay. So this is how Sisunaga, and there are also some successors as well. Okay. After Sisunaga, the son of Sisunaga was Kalashok. Kalasok. Kalashok was the son of Sisunaga and he succeeded. And there were other successions as well. There is also a very famous story about how did Kalashok die. There was a dagger that was thrusted into his neck. Okay, and that is how he died. So there are multiple stories as well. Okay, so after Kalasoka, there are other rulers who came for a transition, and finally we come up to the Nandas. Okay, the Nandas, who from here onwards we will see how were they able to shape the destiny of the Magadhan Empire, as we will see in the upcoming episodes in this series of Ancient History of Bharat. If you are enjoying these videos that I make on the Ancient History of Bharat, do subscribe to our channel, do like this video and share it with the people who have a similar interest in history, but for whatever reasons they are not able to catch up on it, or they are frustrated by the history that is taught through our books in our schools and whatnot. Okay, that's it for this episode of Ancient History of Bharat. I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching.